Hello, hello, hello. Happy Monday after daylight savings change for those of us that follow daylight savings. So, I figured it was a good opportunity to take a few moments to think about time. I don't know about you all, but time in my household has gotten a little wonky over the last 24 hours. My two littles, third and fifth grade, okay, really, they're not so little anymore, but they still feel little to me, have sailed through every fall when we fall back off of daylight savings onto standard time without a problem. I was like, what's going on? What's the big deal? And then this year it all went haywire. It's okay. We're making it work. We're figuring it out. But I thought it could be a great time to jump in and think about time. It is this thing that we all live every day. Many of us feel like we don't have enough of it. There's too much we're trying to get into the time that we have in each of our class periods or in a school day or even in a school year, right? We think of time on so many different dimensions, on so many different scales. And time as it relates to data is also a really funny component because we both simultaneously often think about time in any of the data that we're looking at. This is this like wonky thing that happens that many of us, when we're looking at a scatter chart or we're looking at a line graph, regardless of what the data actually are, the variables or attributes, we often ascribe time when we are thinking about it. So those of you that have been in sessions where I've showed the Pew Research poll of sugar consumption per day versus number of decayed teeth, we know that the most common detractor are the two that include in recent years, even though time is not on that graph. Or if you've seen some of the graphs that came out during the pandemic and how we organize our time, that time is actually on the graph, but we've got this like wonky organization of the time. And oftentimes when I'm working with teachers and we're thinking about, okay, so is time actually in our data set? And is it actually in our question of what we were trying to explore with those data? Great. Okay, so then time goes in our graph, which then gets us to that next question of, well, so how do we graph it? And inevitably, when I'm in a group, like a room with educators or pre-service teachers or science communicators, the adage of when it's time, make a line often comes up. Now, as a first resort, like fun little jingle, this works okay, but with some caveats. So this is my like Monday nugget to share out. What are some of those caveats? One, typically Excel and Google Sheets do not read our numbers of dates or times as actual numbers. They read it as a category. And so it can create really wonky things where if you have a gap in your time series, in the data of the time, the Excel and Google Sheets will scale it exactly the same as if there is no gap in time. So if you use a line graph in one of those two graphing programs, workaround, do a connected scatter plot. Same thing, same result. You can even get rid of the little bubbles for the points if you don't want the scatter point dots there. It's just an aesthetic workaround of how it looks. But a scatter chart will actually read in as the continuous number sequence. Okay, but what if we are looking at, if we're comparing between months as categories, or if we're comparing between seasons as categories, then we don't actually want a line because you can't be halfway between January and February. You either are in January or you are in February. We can't be in between. And so then actually we want to use our graph types like the good old bar chart that our students love as the categories of time. And so when it's time, make a line does not actually always work because sometimes we want our graph or that time component differently. It's not continuous. And therefore, we don't need the line chart for it. Another thing that often comes up is, well, does it go on the x-axis or the y-axis? And again, this sort of depends on like, what are we looking at? What is our question? Where are we going for? Very often, we put time on the x-axis. very often when we were looking at a cause and effect relationship, and there is actually an independent and a dependent variable in our experiment, then yes, absolutely, time should go on the x-axis. But that's not always the case. And my little one, my not so little fifth grader, came home with a great example of when that is not the case. So, proud mama moment, share out his bar chart. Yes, the lines are connected like a histogram, but it's actually a bar chart, small details. But what I want to point out is they were looking at different types of materials and how long they take to biodegrade. So, along his x-axis, he put all the different categories of different types of materials. So then what was the y? Y was the time, from months to years to an undetermined amount of time for those materials to break down. So it's a great example of time can be on the y-axis as well. Could he have flipped it? Sure. But, let's think about it. Let's get a little more open-ended than just when it's time, make a line. Okay, speaking of time, dun, 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 it is time to share out what we have been working on for so long, and so excited to share with everyone. I know this live stream is going long today because I'm just super excited, and we're in the time warp of moving off of the daylight savings. So what we have, backed by popular demand, is we are bringing the data trailblazers back to the scene and thinking about how can we, as we've been building over the year and thinking and hearing and doing lots of reaching out and hearing from different folks, what is it that you want? What is it that you need? And we've packaged it all in to the Data Trailblazers Academy. What is the Academy? Well, we're kicking off next month in December, where we are going to be anchoring into different data literacy principles, accessing relevant data sets, mastering those different graph types for you and your learners, thinking about how we can implement effective strategies to get our students doing data exploration themselves, helping our students craft these meaningful data narratives, actually making sense and interpreting what's going on in the data. We'll talk about kind of how to lead those classroom discussions, how to maximize the tools and technologies that you have, or maybe what are some free options out there that you could consider using with your students to help them dive deeper. We'll be designing engaging database lessons for your curriculum, for your interests and your need, and creating this classroom culture of data curiosity, where we're really getting those students jumping in and diving in. So I will put a link for this landing page where you can figure out kind of what's all involved, how we're going to be doing our goal settings, how you can get personal one-on-one attention. Each month, what we'll be doing for these data mastery workshops where we deep dive into some of these topics and how it relates to you and your students and the curriculum that you have, the teacher support hub, the resource pack that we have, and of course, as always, sharing out how did it all go? So I invite you to check it out. I invite you to come join us and other like-minded data educators who are thinking about how to bring it into their classroom. And more importantly, I invite you so that you can have some wins, some big wins with your students in the upcoming months this school year, preparing them for those state tests that are coming in the spring, but also so that you can have those joyful moments where they're engaged and they're working hard and they're making sense of it and they're actively participating. That is the reality that we're looking for. That's what we're going after. So thanks for sticking with me for this long rambling live stream about time and what does time mean and how do we graph with time. And also, if you've got some time, check out the Data Trailblazers Academy. We would love to work with you in the coming months. If you've got any questions, reach out. We're always here, happy to support you and answer any, thoughts or comments or questions, requests that you have. Send them our way. There's a link on the Data Trailblazers Academy of how to get in touch with us. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Monday and good luck tomorrow. Hopefully we can settle out